Automation, and our topic today is the future of cloud computing and the future of IT itself. To talk about that, we've got three great experts, including Greg Knieriemen, Chief Evangelist with Hitachi Data Systems. Hey, Greg, how are you doing?
Great. Thanks for having me, James.
And remind me where you are located, Greg?
Cleveland, Ohio.
Cleveland,
I work
Ohio.
out of Santa Clara, but live in Cleveland.
Okay. I grew up in the Midwest myself, and I realize it's really the only place to be from. I don't tell people that, but that is the truth.
Well, yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Also with us, Scott Sanchez, Director at Cisco, OpenStack Strategy. Hello to you, Scott.
Hello, hello. Happy to be back. Thank you.
And we know you're there in Austin. That's very cool.
Cool and warm today. So
that's okay. You're driving your convertible earlier today.
We make up for the Texas summers with the winters.
Very good. And Dana Gardner is the analyst and founder at Interarbor Solutions, pundit guy, IT expert. Hello to you, Dana.
Hello, James. Good to be with you again.
And I know you're in the Northeast. Is it snowing heavily there already up in that area?
No, it's been unseasonably mild, and we haven't really had any severe weather at all. So not sure what's going on. Maybe El Nino's going to be good to us this year.
I mean, the benefits of global warming, who knows?
Right.
I don't know. Yeah. So, I mean, we've heard about it. I've read about this on the internet. Apparently, IT is actually dead, believe it or not. It's going to be, we're all going to log in with our smartphones, to a remote infrastructure. No company is going to need an IT department anymore. IT departments are apparently very 2004. They're passé. IT is dead. So it's a huge change, and it's pretty cool. Greg, are you hip and trendy enough to be on board with this whole IT is dead thing?
Yeah, I think, James, it creates attractive headlines and clickbait, I think. But the reality is that IT is never going to be dead. It's here with us. And that doesn't mean to the detriment of cloud, but IT is going through a transformation just like every significant business is going through a transformation right now. So this shouldn't surprise us. It's not unusual. It's going to look different, but IT is not dead.
When you say look different, what do you mean?
Well, I think obviously as newer technologies come along, there's going to be a blend of legacy applications and legacy systems, and I think there's going to be the blend with cloud services, and that could be public, private, hybrid, managed services. It's going to take a lot of different forms. It's not going to be just a simple one-size-fits-all model as we emerge. It's definitely a transformation, though.
And actually, one short tangent I must go down. When you use the word managed services, it also can be a synonym for private cloud in some situations, correct?
It could very well be, yes.
Yeah, which leads me to believe private cloud is not dying or going away, but that may be another discussion for another day.
Yes.
IT is dead. Scott, I guess it's all shadow IT now, or is it, we just log on with our credit card to AWS and that's all there is?
I've been saying that shadow IT is the new IT, rather than IT is dead, which we can all make clickbaity headlines, and I do believe the headline of this particular episode we're all on was titled that.
It's one of my most clickbait headlines, and I feel pretty proud about that. I mean, Huffington Post has the best clickbait headlines, like how does weight gain depress your puppy? But I mean, is IT dead is up there with that.
Well, I don't know. It's kind of like the BuzzFeed headline of cloud, but no, shadow IT is being legitimized, right? It's not shadow IT anymore when the senior leadership of the company is knowingly funneling you the money to do it, right? It's come out of the shadow, and I think cloud and a lot of these initiatives have enabled the lines of business to have actual legitimate IT budgets and legitimate projects that are coming out of the shadows for a lot of reasons.
But is it shadow IT if you've got budget and it's structured and it's executed in a way where there's oversight and control?
Well, that's my point, is that it's no longer shadow IT when it's designed to be there. I think the difference is what we're starting to see is IT in the traditional sense of we have this team over here and it's central IT, that there was this blurring of the lines. It was like, well, there's IT, and then there's everything else that we do that we don't tell IT about, right? And that was the shadow IT part. And now it's not so much shadow anymore. It's sanctioned by the people who want companies to make money and be profitable, right? but there's a different purpose to it, right? This IT team over here might be the ones working on, adding machine learning to our mobile app to do X, Y, or Z. And that's different from central IT, who's going to keep all our stuff secure and make sure our email works and make sure that employees can do their jobs properly, right? And so the role of IT is switching.
Or even when the IT operation itself is shifting to non-IT players, like line of business owners now are taking control of their CRM tools and the different resources that they're using. I think yesterday that would have been considered shadow IT, but now this is kind of how business gets done.
Yeah, they would have had to do it in the shadows because there might have been a CRM tool that they were being told or forced to use that wasn't meeting their needs, and they had to go out and do something to supplement that, and that was the shadow part. And now it's okay. Like, central IT might run the customer database, but how you use that data is paid for by an IT project that the line of business might run, and that's that split that leads to headlines like, "Is IT dead?"
You guys are saying the shadow IT has gone from being a bug to being a feature.
Right. Yes.
I mean, there needs to be a new term for shadow IT. Shadow IT is vaguely negative. I mean, what is it now called? Now that our shadow IT is no longer really shadow IT.
Well, now they're proof of concepts. So you find what's working in your company, and then you let them make the mistakes, and you blame it on them, and then you centralize it, and you fix the small things that need to be fixed, and it's a fine new company-wide activity.
Right.
Now, this was the case with PCs 25 years ago, right?
Explain the analogy to me now.
And then wireless, and then mobile. I mean, there's always been a shadow IT creeping up on enlightened IT over and over again. These are just waves. These are just patterns that we've seen before. It's not dead. It's simply an adolescent, and it's got mood swings. I really think that IT is in many ways immature, not at death's doorstep.
But it does seem, correct me if I'm wrong, that the traditional IT department is losing some cachet power, voting power. They're less of a monolith. I mean, is the IT department at least had some fade to it, or not even?
I'm losing control over my adolescent teenage daughter, but that doesn't mean that she's not going to be vibrant and happy and productive. So I don't know whether it's IT that's losing or whether it's business that's losing control. That's the issue that people should be concerned about. IT should reinvent itself constantly. It's whether the business goals are being met or not. And businesses are going to be more dependent on technology. Companies are software-centric to a degree they haven't been, and they're going to get more so. So it's not so much whether it's old or new IT, it's whether IT is being put to productive use, and it's the type of use that you need to run your business.
So the last thing you said really stands out to me, and it's something that comes up a lot, which is it's not so much, you could argue, that the lines of business are becoming shadow IT. It's that IT is becoming their business, right? I keep pointing out these, I think we've all probably seen them, the GE commercials where the 20-something millennial says to his friends or says to his parents, like, "Hey, I got this awesome job as a developer. I'm working for GE," and they're like, "Awesome, awesome!" Right? Here's his sledgehammer or whatever. Like, but the reality is that there are many companies, whether you're in manufacturing, whether you're in pharmaceuticals, whether you're in banking, right? Most banks, you could argue today, are not places where your money gets stored. They're technology companies. And so if your business is becoming technology, why wouldn't you put the technology investment into that side of the business as opposed to a central group that's not your business? And I think that shift of most companies are becoming technology companies, whether we realize it or not. Retail, it doesn't, like, the list is endless. No matter what you do, you're pretty much becoming a technology company. Right. That's why we see the IT budget swelling inside the lines of business. It's not that IT's dead. It's just that everybody's IT now.
And so if you're going how well you do technology, would you want to have it under strict control, a top-down hierarchy, or would you open up the floodgates a little bit and let some innovation take off organically and let different people and different groups around your company find things that might work in their personal lives and start incorporating that into their business? The companies that are going to, with all things equal, the company that wins is the one that does technology best. And therefore, you have to let it be organic and creative and chaotic. That's just a part of life. So don't think about IT as being dead. Just think about it as being a little less under control, but that's probably a good thing.
Is it less under control, though? Sorry, go ahead.
Company culture. Yeah, I mean this is where you get into individual companies, individual visions. But the idea of a old-fashioned corporate hierarchical structure where everything gets done planned months in advance with cycles that are predictable, that's not going to work. So IT is actually teaching the business how to be a little different by being a little bit more chaotic, being a little bit more organic, loosey-goosey. Mistakes will be made, but that's not to say that you give up all control. You need to have governance and compliance, of course. It's a balancing act, and the pendulum swings back and forth. The pendulum will swing a little bit too far towards chaos, you bring it back, but if it swings too far towards rigidity and repetitiveness for the sake of doing it the way it's always been done, then that needs to change too.
I think it also reflects the evolving role of the CIO. We've seen, in fact, I've heard anecdotal stories about how CIOs in some organizations are being completely phased out, and in some organizations, the CIO is kind of the chief innovator and the one that's, like you said, Dana, opening up those floodgates and providing the flexibility, the tools, and the resources so that innovation can thrive in those organizations. And that's why I think that the CIO, that leadership that you have within the business, I don't care if it's a bank or a manufacturer or a mining company, the CIO is in a very unique position to help guide that, or if he's not guiding it, he's going to be getting out of the way very quickly.
Right. What is taking the place of the CIO if the chief information officer is not doing his or her job? Who's replacing that person?
Well, like we were talking about where shadow IT has cropped up and how the line of businesses are taking ownership of their IT resources and tools that they use. That's what's happening in some organizations. But I think we're in a phase of time where there's a unique opportunity for the CIO to exercise some leadership and think about the innovation they can help enable their teams to leverage. And so it's going to be upon the CIO to take advantage of this opportunity or, again, be phased out.
Yeah, I think you see that a lot, right, where, at least I see it, where we talk to our customers and they have a menu, right, that the IT organizations haven't evolved fast enough. And so it's still that old school menu. Here's your service catalog approach to what you can do. As long as it's in this list, go crazy. And then you have that business driver of, look, I can swipe my credit card and essentially go get anything I want these days, right? Or I can set up my own private cloud over there in some other data center and go crazy if I want. And like those choices really just weren't available, right? We talk about what cloud really has done for this industry, the accessibility of it, the smaller chunks, right? Everybody talks about automation and DevOps, and this is what's so great. No, what's really so great is I can just go get anything I need for less money than would even get flagged on my expense report. And that's what is pushing the CIO to do his or her job in a completely different way, right? You have to reset all expectations of what seems normal when the alternative is, I used to have 18 months to deliver something to the business. Now I have like 18 hours, or they just get frustrated and they go swipe their credit card somewhere.
Why is it taking so long? Scott, it was funny those General Electric TV ads you're talking about. Where I give credit to GE for like making fun of themselves as a stodgy old company, and they're actually pretty funny TV ads. But it's interesting. I also see this so much. There's this sort of this sense among the chattering class. It's like the legacy tech companies have somehow been supplanted. I mean, they're on their way out, and the smaller startups are going to take over. And these household tech names that we've known for years are actually not keeping up, so they're going to fade away surprisingly quickly.
Greg, are you guys fading away? I don't feel like I'm fading away. I don't know about you.
Not anytime soon.
This is another recurring theme, right? We've heard this many times before. In 2001, Microsoft was going to rule the world, and then 1988, IBM was going to rule the world. Everyone else was going to fade away. This is just another recurring theme. It just happens to be a couple of big public cloud providers now. They're going to have an impact, but they're going to have a positive impact. It's disruption, and then people react to it. Some people can react well and adjust and stay in the market. Other people will go the way of blockbusters. So it's really more an indictment of a particular company and their culture than it is to say all vendors that happen to have a legacy business are going to go, belly up. It's how do you adjust? IBM reinvented itself in 1996. They did very well. They might have to reinvent themselves again, but
that's right.
That's the key, reinvention, not whether you're in a legacy business or not.
I just read an article recently. Well, obviously, since the Dell EMC thing happened, we've seen headlines in Wired magazine about The Walking Dead, and kind of
I saw the piece, right?
This really dark image of legacy companies. But I saw an article recently. It talked about the 5 oldest IT companies, and they're still around. It's the IBMs, the HPs, the Texas Instruments.
Unisys.
These are companies that are still here. They're not going anywhere. And I'm not trying to define or defend legacy vendors here, but I think this concept of dinosaurs and Walking Dead is a bit overplayed. Again, it goes back to the clickbait thing. It sounds interesting, but Scott made the comment about how these companies are evolving. Look, every IT company, just like their own customers and their businesses, are evolving, some faster than others, and the ones that don't evolve are going to go by the way of Blockbuster. It's very simple.
James, look at the fact that global GDP is growing by maybe 2 or 3% aggregate. Some economies growing faster than others. You know how fast the server market is growing? 7%.
Is the server market itself actually a hardware market still? I thought software was eating the world, but you're telling me like just the server market
where does software run, right?
Really, you mean software needs hardware to run?
Exactly. This is a funny argument, right? Like, none of this stuff matters anymore. Really? Because where's all this other stuff that's so magical? I'm an application guy through and through, but like at the end of the day, you still need like things for it to run on, right? It still needs power and cabling and switches and routers and servers and all of this stuff. It's just whether, as a developer, are you thinking about that? Maybe not. You're thinking about where's my app run. But then there's all these other teams of people that make all the magic happen, right?
I guess the software-defined data center does have to run on some piece of hardware somewhere.
Oh yeah. I mean, containers are great. I don't need anything anymore. Maybe I'm using CoreOS. I don't even need an operating system anymore. Right?
If you've got containers, you don't need anything else.
Exactly, right? But
yeah, containers and DevOps, that's everything you need.
It just changes your lens as the user to what's important, right? What's important might be this little chunk of a container, but then you rely on other people and other technologies that actually make the container work. It's just what you focus on. Used to have to be the entire stack from cement up through internet connectivity, and now I can just worry about my little piece and move a lot faster as a result.
That's right.
So, all right. So, if IT isn't dead, what, and some things from the past will continue on. What is one thing we should be looking at? Either a technology or a trend that, if we keep track of this one indicator, this one trend, we're going to sort of know what's going on. What is that key indicator out there that really makes sense? Dana, you have a sense of that?
Well, it's not to say that the IT business isn't changing, and it's going through a maturation process. Not too different from what was written about years ago with the switch being thrown, comparing it to railroads, comparing it to electric utilities and energy. And clearly the days of a software company with a lock-in platform making 65 to 85% margins year in and year out is probably over.
Right.
But many businesses do quite well with an 8 to 10% margin, and software companies and platform companies and legacy IT vendors are going to be heading in that direction. It's not to say it's a bad business, but it's maturing. So there are always going to be new startups that will be able to come in and have a high margin and capture a market share, an addressable market, until someone comes in and competes with them, and then their margins go down, and it's cyclical. It goes over and over. But maybe there's some things that are changing, and that's the idea of the high-margin lock-in legacy vendor. Mm-hmm. I think we're seeing a little less lock-in than we used to, and this has been ongoing for a long time. That's not to say it's a bad thing. There's more choice. The thing that makes hybrid cloud so appealing is that people have choice. If I have a software-defined data center that's very efficient, if I have automation and orchestration that allows me to create applications quickly and rapidly put them into production, if I can then iterate on those apps rapidly, well, that's a good system. I might say, well, let's look at the cost-benefit analysis of having it on-prem, having it in a managed service environment, or in a public cloud, or all three. That's kind of where we're going. And when you have that kind of choice, that's going to drive down margins further, because not only will you be competing IT vendor against comparable IT vendor, but you'll be competing IT vendor against cloud provider, against service managed provider. That's a good thing. This is all good news for the user, for the enterprise. IT isn't dead. IT is going to have a much better deal, and the vendors are going to have to become like most other industrial organizations striving to hold on to their market share and competing at low margins.
Greg, your sense of a key indicator. What do you really keep? Like, is it containers? Is it the role of developers? What do you really keep an eye on?
Well, I guess from a very Hitachi specific perspective, right? We're looking at the Internet of Things that matter, and
not just the Internet of Things, but the Internet of Things that matter.
I'm stealing that. I just made a note here.
That's my next clickbait headline, by the way. The Internet of Things that matter. Okay.
Well, it's important. It's one of the ways that we talk about how businesses and IT departments are transforming. It's one of the ways that Hitachi is transforming, right? And we realized, the landscape and the requirements for businesses, smart cities, and other things is changing very quickly. And we're looking at where the IT investments are going, and they're really going into tools that help companies run more efficiently, that help cities run more efficiently, that help cities produce public safety more efficiently and more accurately. So the landscape for us is a little bit broader than it might be for a lot of traditional infrastructure-based companies. And I know Cisco's going through the same transformation as well, and I'm sure Scott can speak to this. And I think that's where the smart IT vendors are going, and they're not just heads down looking at this as an infrastructure-centric world. It's much broader than that.
Scott, what do you track as you sort of try to keep on what's going on? What is there a key indicator or a key technology that really matters to you?
I mentioned it before in passing, and I don't think people give enough credit to the impact machine learning is going to have on just everything that we do. And I'm seeing it more and more. We've had customers kind of come through this, hey, we're using our private cloud for virtual machines and test beds, and we're using our public cloud for this, and now we've got big data going, and big data is great, rah, rah, big data, right? That big data becomes useful when you do something with it. Just collecting it and being able to analyze it doesn't really do anything. You need data scientists, you need other things. Well, guess what? Now you've got lots of horsepower and lots of data coming together on demand to do really interesting things around machine learning. And so, IoT, again, great. Got billions of sensors, billions of data collectors that are going into these centralized and decentralized places of storage and compute. But then what do you do with it, right? It's not really truly valuable until you can make decisions. Smart cities, right? Do I pick up the trash in this neighborhood today, or do I wait till next week? How are the traffic signals going? How are the trains? How's the power usage, right? All the things we think about when we think smart cities. And Hitachi, Cisco, there's a lot of folks playing in that space around the world. But to me, it's when I talk to a customer who is really talking about at that next level already, what are we going to do with the data? That's when I know that the light bulb has gone off for them as a business. It's not just about collecting it and storing it and running reports, but how are we in truly real time? We see this a lot in retail. We see this a lot in banking today. How are we going to make real-time decisions using our data? And things like machine learning are truly going to transform that. So that's the conversation for me. That's aha, I've got a customer here that is really going to do something interesting.
It's interesting about the machine learning that I think about. One of the real values of big data is being able, a set of humans being able to glean through all this data. But obviously, machine learning is this continuous input into the system, and the system itself begins to auto-correct, which can be extremely powerful. Are you saying that almost, from what you're talking to people, they're more excited about the system itself auto-correcting, more than even individuals sitting down and gleaning through the data and coming up with fancy pie charts to tell them where to go, where to sell?
Yeah, the best example of machine learning for people that are trying to wrap their heads around it, you can Google Super Mario Brothers machine learning. And there's a guy that wrote a little library to beat Super Mario Brothers, right? And he gave it essentially no inputs other than you can jump and you can move forward and you can move backwards and that's it, right? Here are the commands, figure it out. And over, I don't know how many tens of thousands of iterations of itself trying to play this game, it learned. It's not artificial intelligence, it's machine learning. And it's just a really good, here in 5 minutes, you get this super kind of deep introduction to how machines actually can learn without it being artificial intelligence, which is the next step with Google's new server that's 100 million times faster than anything out there. what could you do with that, right? But yeah, you got all this data coming in, and data scientists are amazing. They're also in high demand and hard to find, and are limited by their own scope of view of the world, right? So as you got lots of data, you got lots of compute. What could you do with it? That's where I think we're going to see a surge in machine learning, and a surge as the scale of the data we collect and are able to analyze grows.
James,
that's when it goes crazy.
I would just add, this goes back to the evolving role of the CIO and how they take advantage of these tools, and they're able to bring some business intelligence back to the business and creating real business value. And I think that's the mindset for the new CIO.
It used to be show me what happened last quarter. Now it's going to be show me what's going to happen next quarter. Right, and that's real-time data. If I'm a retail company, that's real-time data from beacons and connected analytics in the stores, and all of these things, and actual purchases, and what's in my shopping cart, and what's happening on Facebook, and you're able to predict what's going to happen. That type of data is really hard to do if you don't have all the pieces we've, as an industry, been putting together over the last 5 or 10 years. All the technologies, all the innovation, that's going to enable what will happen.
Oh, okay, if we're thinking about machine learning, which gets me out of artificial intelligence, and by the way, I am a robot. I'm actually a program of an avatar.
I totally believe that, James. Actually,
it's pretty convincing, I think. And as a side tangent, I think there's this step-by-step movement towards artificial intelligence, which true AI is really elusive, but the percentage-wise, 49%, 50%, 60%, we're going to keep gaining on, and sometimes it'll be enough without they need to go to true intelligence. But if we're on the topic of the future, what is IT going to look like that in the year, say, 2020 or 2025?
I just want to point out first,
yes,
2020 is not very far away.
I know, that's true. Is that not frightening? It's 2015, but it's going to be 2016 in a couple of weeks. So you're right. 2020 is scarily close. So that you should be able to do a pretty good job of predicting what's going to be happening in your self-driving car. Daniel, what are things going to look like in just a few years down the road? I guess, and also, what should business people be thinking about? What should they be investing in, given the way it's going to look?
Yeah. So listening to Greg and Scott, kind of points in the right direction. That is to say, more intelligence, more data in more places being used faster. That means your feedback loops are shrunk. That means you can employ algorithmic intelligence rapidly and then let the machines decide what to do about it. Again, making intelligence not maybe artificial, but rapid and consistent and constant. And then you can learn from those iterations. So it's funny, when we thought a minute ago about the death of IT, we're thinking, okay, maybe a couple of big public cloud providers will come in and take over. But in order for that vision about the intelligence to happen, more and more of the compute activity needs to be pushed out to the edge. One of the big things that helped with big data was in-memory architectures, where the compute and the memory were very close. You didn't have to move batches of data and compute and then move it back out. Well, we have to move that out, instead of in memory, out in sensor, in device, in edge, in network. And so that is another reason why it's not all just going to be one big cloud provider. All the vendors that need to create that intelligent network with all those intelligent nodes, keeping the data at the node perhaps or close to it, this is all what's going to allow that sort of intelligence, actionable intelligence at the edge to happen. And we can see that the cost of memory and the cost of compute has gone down so much, and the size of the devices are so small, that this isn't really science fiction. This is really around the corner. But we need to think a little bit differently about, how do we take advantage of intelligence in the machine at the edge, and then only elevate the metadata and the analysis back to the apps and to the cloud or the data center. So that's kind of where I see things going, and it's very exciting because businesses can stop running based on intuition or the highest paid person's opinion. When you make a business decision, it will be entirely and fully evident what the right course of action should be. It's tried, it's tested, it's empirical, it's already happened 100,000 times on the edge. You're just bringing it back and centralizing and making it policy. It means very accurate types of business decisions, very accurate personal decisions about your life, your family, your purchases, your finances. So it's kind of, we're taking the margin in error out of business, and that's significant.
Which suggests that the winners in business will rely heavily on big data, which in turn means that without a serious investment in big data, those who cannot invest heavily in big data will be left behind, is what that scenario suggests.
Why wouldn't you invest in big data? That's why it's big now, is because you can afford to crunch any data. So we can get rid of big. Big's gone. It's now actionable data. It's the right data in the right place at the right time for your machine, for your employees, for yourself, for your company. And we can afford to do this because the price points are such that why wouldn't you get every bit of data and then analyze it?
Greg, your view of where this is going in the not too distant future, what do you see happening?
Well, I think Dan is absolutely correct, and I think it's not a matter of investment into big data as much as it is, and I keep going back to good leadership in CIOs and CTOs, kind of painting that picture of how IT adds value back to the business, and which I think is critically important. And I think we're going to see a rapid acceleration of this. You said 2020. I would imagine even by 2018, we're going to see significant markers here of rapid acceleration of the Internet of Things that matter and how that's being leveraged for the.
What will those markers be? You say?
Oh, I think it's going to be, obviously it's going to be the growth of those business, or if it's not growth, it's going to be expanding profit margins for those businesses. I mean, I think we'll see those indicators pretty plainly from a business growth or profitability perspective. I also think, and this is going to be one of the emerging, we've all talked about kind of IoT, big data. I think the other trend that's going to be here is a more consciousness of what happens to that data, and I think privacy and security concerns are going to creep up, and I think that is going to be kind of the next focal point, because as businesses stay ahead of the technology, society is going to have to be there as well, and I think that's going to be the next challenge is the transparency for businesses to talk about how they're leveraging technology and the value to the consumer of that information, or where the risks are to the consumer for that information. We talk about data breaches and everything else. I think these things are going to get dramatically larger, and the privacy and security issues are going to become more dramatic, more significant.
Sometimes, I want to believe that. Sometimes I wonder, because it seems like consumers tend to be very willing to give up their personal information.
In the U.S., yes, but globally, okay. I don't think that's true. I think in Europe, particularly, you see very high levels of sensitivity about data management, and I think what's going to happen, we see issues like safe harbor and other issues come up. Politically, I think the environment is going to force the U.S. to adopt to some of those. Just from a global business perspective, I think the U.S. is going to have to adopt privacy and security standards that other countries around the world, and Europe particularly, are adopting. We're going to be forced to if we want to do business with Europe.
I think a lot of it too is a generational thing, right? So, people in the millennial range they'll hand over whatever. If you'll give me a notification on my phone that's even remotely helpful, I'll give you everything everything you can possibly know about me to make my life easier.
Really, you think the millennials are that much of a pushover about information?
I think that we have done a good job of conditioning the just connected generation more than anything else, right? And so then you've got like the Gen Xers, where I'll fall into that category, that are a little more cautious, right? I'm like, all right, really, do I need to give you even like my email address? Right. A little more cautious. And then you've got the people who just flat out didn't have a computer until they were in their 20s or 30s, right? And there's a lot more. There's a lot more concern there, right? Like, your secrets were in a book, like in your drawer, and that was it. And even just putting them online at all, online banking, was slow to be adopted by people, because the people that actually had money were the people that were concerned about online banking, right? And now 20 years later, it's just pervasive. Everybody uses it. But I do think the privacy concerns. Just think about what's acceptable now versus what was acceptable 5 years ago, even to you, right? Like, we're so willing to click buttons and do things that even 5 years ago, all of us here probably would have been like, I don't know if I really want to do that. And now it pops up and it's like, you'll share every post you've ever made and every picture and your birthday and all your friends, so that we can tell you your tag cloud of things you talk about. And you're like, yeah, okay, that sounds reasonable, right?
I mean, I buy a pair of jeans, and at the end, the clerk very routinely says, phone number and email, please.
Yeah.
And I just politely say, yeah, I prefer not to give it. But it's just amazing that they're expecting it from everyone. Does everyone really give them their email in exchange for buying a pair of jeans?
But I think what we're seeing, though, the reason I kind of rant on that a little bit is because the people that are going to be, if we look 5 year, 2020, 2025, whatever it is, right, the people who will be in more decision-maker roles in the influential companies are increasingly going to be the people who are more comfortable giving up their data and more comfortable asking other people to give up their data, right? And so, where do we draw the line? I totally agree with you, Greg, that at some point there needs to be some regulation, and we'll probably see that just to be on par with other countries and be able to do business. But it's challenging to find that balance, I think.
Well, I think there's a difference in consumer behavior that you guys are describing, and I think business behavior, because obviously compliance and other regulations are kind of dictating this. I don't think it's as casual as giving up your email address when you're at the Gap. When you talk about these safe harbor agreements, the issues right now that the courts are wrangling with are very significant, and every global business is being impacted by these. And that's why I think that it's going to bubble up. Again, not from the consumer side of things, but certainly from the business side of things, is going to be a very big prevailing issue that's going to have to be managed in a globally connected world.
Isn't there a sense that some people are leery of the U.S.-based cloud providers because they know they're more vulnerable to a subpoena, and so they want to work with a European provider for that reason because it's going to be tighter controls?
So remember I mentioned the pendulum swinging back and forth on different things. Well, the pendulum is swinging on data sovereignty right now in the direction of more regulation, more laws, and making sure that your data is under your control. And it does seem to be, a bit more important for European markets. But I think that's going to continue to play itself out, and people are entitled to regulate in their own jurisdictions according to their democratic process. But when you said a minute ago that somebody asked you for your email, I mean, that is so crazy, outdated. Who cares what your email is? What did you do when you got in the store? How did you reverse the equation of analyze, buy, and spend? And what did you do when you left the store and went into the next store? And which store did you go into? And that doesn't have to be personalized. It can be anonymized so that the pattern and the decision process and how to make the right goods and services available to the right people at the right price at the right time, that's what I think is more powerful. Whether or not they can send you an email with a coupon is kind of, to me, old-fashioned brick-and-mortar thinking. Making sure that you get what you want when you want it, and that your preferences as a consumer are charted and then compared to other markets, and then the customization can come back. So you start general, but then you can get specific. Even without knowing too much about you personally, you can know how to better target consumers, and that's going to be, as I say, it takes the margin of error out of commerce, which is huge.
It's the subtle loss of privacy that has crept up on a lot of us because the data collection and analytics are so good, right? Like, I don't need to know anything about you really if you've got a phone in your pocket that's pinging my Wi-Fi, and you've got a credit card that you're swiping throughout. If I'm at a resort or if I'm in a retail, like I can know everything about you and how you purchase and who you are based on when you come in, which parts of the store you go to, how you shop, what you buy, right? Just with those two things, and you never giving me anything about yourself, I know more than you think you know. Right. Even about yourself, and that's where people get surprised, and they go, "Whoa, you're collecting all this stuff about me," and it's like, well, what do you want?
Scott, what you're describing there, though, is a level of interaction that can be measured. We've been able to measure that for a while. I think what's particularly interesting, we've got use cases of our own customers, retail customers, where they're able to visualize the shopping patterns of large groups of customers within an area, the patterns that they walk within the store, and how they're merchandising and how they're presenting things. this doesn't require any interaction. It just requires a physical body walking through the store that's being tracked and what that looks like. And so as a consequence, those businesses are modifying the shopping experience, obviously to be able to sell more goods and services, and so it's so deep now. It doesn't even require you to make a transaction or to engage with the retailer. Just your physical presence walking through that store. They're measuring patterns of what that looks like to create a better experience for the people that are walking in.
But a lot of that, back to my machine learning kind of tipping point here, is great. You're collecting all that data, and retail's a good example where, you know, it doesn't today. A lot of the decisions that get made are not real time, right? It's let's look at, you know, what was happening, and you have beacons and you have other things that are like, oh, someone's in this aisle, they've bought XYZ before, let me pop up something on the display about a coupon for them, or give them a notification on their phone. Like, that happens today. That's more real-time use. But, you know, what if you could do live A/B testing of things in your store based on individuals that are walking through, that you know things about them? Like, you're not going to have someone sitting there turning dials or typing in different things. That becomes kind of a machine learning exercise. And so all that big data that you've got is very valuable when you do something with it. And that's the tipping point, I think, that we're all trying to get at, is IT, as we know it, is going to become the most important thing that companies invest in, and technologies like cloud and big data and, you know, high performance everything are going to enable that next wave. And we're starting to see it with our customers. You know, Greg, you've hinted that you are too. But I really do think that if we look 3 to 5, 10 years for sure, right? This is just one of those things that we're like, you remember when we didn't do this? That was crazy, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And on that note, my robot overlords are telling me to click stop broadcast. I guess my machine learning systems have clicked in, so I can only tell do what the system tells me to do.
Hey, just remember, James, that as long as you're getting paid less than the machine costs to maintain.
You know, there's a worry and a threat and a fear and maybe a hope in there somewhere, so I'll hang on to the hopeful part of that. Gentlemen, I greatly appreciate your expertise. It's been fantastic. I will send you the link. We can all tweet it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and happy holidays.
Thank you, James. It's been fantastic.
Sure.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Yes.
Fun.